Okay, so what are you saying, people, and welcome back to your favorite YouTube channel. So today, guys, like always, another weekly analysis for you. On the screen are the pairs we'll be analyzing today, but make sure you do stay to the end of the video as I do have a bonus pair in store. We'll quickly go through my trade for the week first. We'll take a look at the DXY and then progress into the analysis. If there is a particular pair you do want to see my analysis to, feel free to skip ahead using the timestamps below. But I had no new positions this week. But I'm still holding on to my Euro Swiss position from the week prior. Again, price is still holding to that same resistance. We've had about 5-6 extra rejections of the same area. I've said as long as price stays below this level of resistance at 0.941, I will stay in the trade expecting that continuation to the downside. And this week we had another like 4 attempts to break through, 1, 2, 3, 4. So price has just been consolidating really on me throughout the week. We did see a bit of profit on Monday, but that was quickly reversed. Nice bearish close again, just before the weekly candle close. Nice rejection of the high, so it's still holding pretty well. So I'm naturally still expecting that continuation to the downside. And if I expand to the daily chart, the trend is still very much in my favor. Market's still very consistent with these lower highs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looking for the next one and a push to the lows there. And I'll look to start managing the trade once we take out this low here. So really nothing to report on, just looking for trend continuation. That's the level I'm shorting from. As long as that level stays intact, it keeps me in the trade. If it breaks, I will exit. And once we start taking out some of these lows, I'll start to manage the trade, and hopefully we can eventually end up back at that low and maybe further as well. So that's still the plan with EURUSD. In terms of the dollar, not much this week, bit of retracement. It looks like we are finishing the week a little bit bullish there with that candle. Overall, still very bullish on the USD. Again, for the weekly chart, that's really where the bias comes from. Solid break of resistance not long ago, breaking out of this 2-year range, and as long as we stay above that level of resistance, which of course is now acting as support, I do expect us to eventually end up back at 113, 114. So I'm looking for this breakout to essentially continue. So any move to the downside, I'm looking as a pullback. Of course, if price was to close back within the range, that's when I'd say, okay, it was a big fake out. Now we can be looking for the DXY to roll over. At that moment in time, everything's still pretty bullish, so I'm not really interested in those shorts, but for now it's still looking for the longs. I've said I'm looking for the bigger pullback to 108, looking to retest this prior high, which of course will be turned support, and just naturally looking for a healthy pullback. If I whip out the fib from the low to the high, pretty sure it lines up with the 50. Yes, it does. So looking for that pullback into that level. That was very much the plan this week, but it does not look like we're getting that. I think there's a bit of a bullish trend line which the market is still respecting at the moment, and looks like we're starting to push off from that. So with the DXY still very bullish, it looks like we might be seeing a potential break to the upside early next week and some early momentum back to the highs. That could be the case. But in terms of sufficient pullbacks and what I'm looking for, I do want to see a slightly bigger retracement for the dollar back into 108 before I do look for long opportunities on USD, but shorting euro, shorting pound, and of course you'll see those setups in a moment. But in terms of the bias, still expecting a push back to the high there next week. So very, very bullish for USD. In terms of Euro USD, of course, pretty much the exact opposite. We're respecting this level here of support pretty well. This is one of the levels I marked out last week. The reason why I didn't get involved here, because the pullback is still pretty shallow. I'm looking for a swing trade where I can hold euro for a while. And with these shallow pullbacks, you tend to expect shallow moves. Not all the time, sometimes they could run. But most of the time, shallow pullbacks give you shallow moves, just like this one here. Nice shallow pullback. Expecting something similar back into the low. I've been looking for a slightly bigger pullback for Euro USD back into 1.046. Retesting some support there. And if I do whip out the fib, it lines up pretty well with the 0.618. Of that fib there. So I'm looking for the bigger correction on USD and on Euro, so they're both kind of in sync. But at the moment in time, it looks like Euro is having a really tough time trying to break through 1.034, and potentially we could be on our way down from that area, especially if USD is going to push early next week like it looks like it might do. Euro USD is probably going to break to the downside. So if you are intraday, I would say keep an eye on some shorts on this one. At the moment, this just looks like consolidation to me for Euro on the hourly chart. But should we start breaking through support here, there could be some nice opportunities underneath that and some nice trends on the way back down. So keep an eye on that if you're looking at some intraday time frames for entries. But for myself, still looking for that bigger pullback. Let's see if it will come next week. Maybe we might see some USD weakness, which would definitely help out me looking for shorts. And this is still really what I got my eyes on, all the way back to the low and potentially a lot further as well. So keep an eye on some shorts. If you're intraday, look for the break and retest after the range breaks. If you're looking for the bigger pullback, we do have our areas there at 1.048, 1.046. So that's kind of really the setup I'm after. But yeah, very bearish in EURUSD, expecting a push to the lows and probably new lows as well next week. So that is the plan. Okay, so moving on to dollar yen. So dollar yen had a bit of a retracement this week, a nice bearish move. We've been moving very corrective for a while, so we've been expecting this. And I'm still looking for longs for dollar yen. Still very bullish price action on the daily chart, higher highs and higher low. Very strong bullish trend, lovely impulse to the upside in our last bullish leg. And we've taken our time to push down, which gives the impression that we are retracing to potentially push higher. And on the weekly chart as well, we do still have that uptrend. We had that massive breaking retest of that resistance on the weekly chart as well. So I do think more upside is the likely move for dollar yen and possibly a push back to the highs there as well. So that's still what I'm looking at. And of course, being bullish on USD, you know, naturally looking to buy dollar yen anyway. And I still do have my confluence here around 154, still looking for a push into that area alongside the 50 of the fib. That's a really nice area which lines up pretty well. Still looking to see if we can get there next week, test that same area, and then look for my confirmations to at least take it back to the prior high, which is up here at 158.5. But again, using a trading stop loss, hopefully the trend does continue. We could look for a push all the way to 162. So that's really my focus next week for dollar yen, and it has been for the past maybe 3 or 4 weeks now. Just waiting for the pullback, and it looks like we've finally got that, and it's still pretty corrective as well. So I like how price is moving. It's not like we're completely melting up the sky, which might be the impression that, okay, maybe it's not a retracement, but so far we're still seeing the characteristics of one. So yeah, as long as we can keep that up, 154, get the confirmations in that area, looking for longs, at least take it back to the high 158.5, but hopefully we can hold it a little bit longer than that to 162. So yeah, that is the plan next week for dollar yen. Okay, so over to USDCAD. So USDCAD is looking like we're trying to break to the upside. We've just seen a successful candle close above the high of the resistance, and it looks like momentum is kicking back in. Of course, if you watched earlier in the video, it looks like DXY is starting to see some bullish signs as well. So maybe USD is going to be strong next week, and we're seeing early signs of that happening on dollar CAD. And of course, looking at the higher time frames, everything is still very bullish. This is the weekly chart. We broke out of that resistance a while ago, and we've just been seeing higher highs and higher lows since. And I still do have that major high, major level on the weekly chart just below 1.47, which I'm still expecting dollar CAD to end up at. Massive resistance once, twice, probably going to go test it a third time eventually. So very bullish on dollar CAD. However, I've been looking for the bigger correction because the market has been so bullish. I do need to see a bit of a retracement before I do jump in and hopefully take advantage of some nice swings. However, that bigger pullback not looking likely at the moment. I did mention this last week that if we don't get that bigger pullback to test 1.415, the next best opportunity would just be the break of the high, looking for some pullbacks afterwards, retest, and so on and so forth. So it's looking like that could be the possibility. Of course, this could be a fake out and price could come straight back below early next week, and then maybe we do see the bigger pullback. So definitely not writing that off, and that's still a very good opportunity should it still happen. So still keep an eye on that. But of course, at the moment, we have to look what price is giving us, and it looks like we are seeing a breakout. So if this momentum can push on a little bit further, keep that momentum going, there could be some really nice break and retest opportunities, probably on the hourly chart there of that same level, around 1.445. Taking some longs, and then you've got that weekly level if you want to target, or let's say price created a new high here, you know, that could then be your target for the trade. That'll be up to you, but keeping it very, very simple. You can either target structure or go target major, weekly levels. Either which way, I do expect price to hit them both eventually, but of course, in terms of trade management, price might come back, take you out break even, then continue. So it's up to you how you want to manage that. But in terms of the setup and the direction, very bullish on dollar CAD. Breaking retest of the high there looks likely, and we've got a big target over there which we're expecting price to go hit. So very, very bullish stuff for dollar CAD. Keep an eye on that breaking retest at 1.446 for next week. Okay, so over to Euro Pound. So Euro Pound is starting to slow down with momentum. You can see we're becoming a little bit more corrective as we approach these major highs, and probably rightly so. But the setup still remains the same as last week and the week before that. Still looking for the break and retest of this level. Really confident breakout with that 4-hour candle close, and we're really seeing continuation. So I am still looking for the pullback and the retest of this level. I know it's pretty far away, but Euro Pound does tend to have those bigger corrections and those bigger pullbacks. It's a very choppy pair, and it tends to swing around quite a lot. So I do think a retest of this level is still pretty realistic, and looking for some longs off the back of that is very much my plan. Of course, I've spoke about many a times about this monthly level of support which we're trading in, which is why I'm looking for that reversal to the upside and more upside, because we're trading in monthly really strong monthly support. And you can see that this current candlestick is looking pretty bullish. I know we still do have 13 days left before the candle does close, but we are more or less looking pretty strong, and we could still see a big reaction as we've done each time prior to that. So very, very bullish on Euro Pound, and the fact is we are starting to break structure to the upside, which is taking out these highs there. We've just seen a wick above that, so seeing evidence that buyers are stepping in, and of course since that double bottom we've seen some bullish structure. So the plan is to look for a pullback of that move, and that's for me the best place to look for a buy. I have considered this area here, but I'm not as big of a fan of that level. For example, if I do whip up the fib from the low to the high of this leg, you can see it's not even quite lining up with the 50 there. So it's not enough of a pullback, especially when the past few candles have been very, very corrective. It's not something I'm looking to take there. So I want to see a bigger pullback. 0.83286 is my area, just in between the 0.5 and the 0.618. Hopefully we tag the 0.618 when we get there. Look for entries, and then hopefully we can take it right back to the high, knowing that we're in the direction of the monthly time frame, and potentially we could go very, very far. So that is the plan there for next week for Euro Pound. Okay, so now on to Aussie dollar. So Aussie dollar still moving in this corrective manner. I'm expecting a pullback. We've taken out some major lows, well, a lot of major lows actually. We've taken out these major lows here, these as well, and these as well on the daily / weekly chart. So we're due a pullback. The market's been falling for quite a while. We're definitely stretched. I'm still very bearish on Aussie dollar. I'm very bullish USD. So I still do see lower prices for this one in the long run. Still looking for a push back to these COVID lows eventually, but of course, we're not going to just move there in a straight line. We're going to have pullbacks. We're going to have some deep pullbacks as well. So that's kind of what I'm anticipating with Aussie dollar, since we've just gone and taken out those major lows there from 2022. So I do expect to see some upside. However, at the moment, the market is still pretty bearish. We're still putting lower highs in. Possibly the market does keep falling. Not really something I'm interested in. I'm looking for that deeper pullback, as I mentioned last week, back into 0.638, 0.64. That's really where I want to be looking to short from. It was really nice level on the daily chart. Solid support once, twice. We've broken through. Now looking for it to hold as resistance. And it would be a healthy enough pullback for me for that last major high. If I draw it to the low, you can see it does line up pretty well from 0.618 of that last bearish leg. So I do want to see that big correction, because I know once we do get it and it retests a big level on the daily chart, and it does, see follow through, I know that could potentially go pretty far, and it could be a situation where I just hold that trade for a while. The shallow pullbacks are great intraday time frames, but you're never looking for a big move, because you know that once price takes up the low, there's a good chance price is going to turn back around against you there. So nothing wrong with that, of course. It's just for the time frames I'm looking to trade on and the moves I'm looking to take, I do need to see some healthier pullbacks and retest some bigger areas in the market. So my area of interest still lies around that 0.63864 area. Hopefully we can see the pullback soon. We need some USD weakness for that. We'll see if we get it. But that's really my level of focus. Yeah, we'll be looking to short it back into the low, but I will be expecting lower prices. I'll be trading stops below as well. So that is the plan there for Aussie dollar next week. Okay, so next up we've got New Zealand CAD. So very bearish on this one still. We've had a pretty corrective week. Similar to Aussie dollar, which we just had a look at. You can see prices becoming very corrective right now. So hence I do expect to see a bigger pullback at some point. We've been very bearish. We've taken out some major lows as well, similar to Aussie dollar too, taking out this low here on the daily chart, this low here as well. So again, I do expect to see a bigger pullback at some point, but I do very much expect lower prices. I do think eventually we'll probably take out these lows and continue falling. But first, I do want to try and catch that next lower high. If I drop back to the 4-hour chart, you can see the prior lower highs here on the 4-hour, 1, 2, 3. My goal is to try and catch that next one before we do see the follow through. Potentially might just put a high in here and continue falling. That could be the case, but naturally I'm looking for bigger pullbacks so I can capitalize on bigger moves as well. And there's two areas which I do like the look of. That consolidation we've spoken a lot about, and also the retest of this low here. If I do whip out the fib from the high to the low, you can see it lines up pretty well with the 50, pretty well with 0.618. And even if we have a slightly deeper correction, we've got the 0.786 there as well. But naturally, those are my areas of confluence I'll be happy to short from, coming back into some nice levels. We've seen a healthy enough correction where I know I can potentially push this trade at least back to the lows there if the trend does continue, but more so potentially further than that as well whilst trading stops. So I'll be happy to see if I can get some entries at either one of these areas really. So New Zealand CAD still very bearish. The fact that we're taking out those major lows on the daily on the left show that we're moving with a lot of intent here, and higher time frame structure is broken. So I do think we can see a bit of a bearish trend which could last for a while for New Zealand CAD, but we'll speak more about that as things develop. But for now, just still looking at that next bearish leg, trying to catch the next lower high in the sequence, and hopefully a push back to the lows next week. But that will be the plan for New Zealand CAD. Okay, so over to pound NZD. So pound NZD, I'm still looking for a bit more downside before we look for some buys. You can see I've marked out these higher lows, been very consistent with them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, looking for number 6. Do have some nice confluence lining up with that previous daily high over there, which of course we turn to support. We do have some nice trendline confluence. And if I do whip out the fib from the last low to the high, you can see we do have the 0.618 just at that area as well. So I would like to see a little bit more downside for pound NZD for the bounce at that area. Now, I'm not necessarily expecting pound NZD to bounce here and then swing completely back to the highs there. I'm looking at the higher time frames, more so the weekly chart. And I do think price is in an area where we could actually see a big reversal. We've taken out some major highs from COVID. I do think price is in an area where we could actually see a big move down. I'm still looking at this as a big impulse. This might just be a very prolonged correction. So I'm not necessarily expecting a consistent trend for forever. I do think we're at some areas where we might turn around. Of course, we don't know. All I can do really as a trader is making sure I'm buying in areas where I can expect other buyers to step in, sellers to take profit, and I know price has a good chance of reacting. And that's what we got with this area here. Potentially price might push all the way back to the high, or it might push a third of the way and then reverse. But there's a good chance we do have a reaction should we see the necessary confirmation we need to get into a trade. So that's really what I'm looking at for pound NZD, a push back into 2.115, hopefully a nice confirmation in that area, get into some buys, and then we'll see how far we can take it. If you're looking at areas for partials, I would say keep an eye on this high on the left. That could be a really nice target to have, locking gains, trail stops, and then yeah, if we do continue to trail stops. If we do reverse, still walk away with a decent profit as well. So really liking this pound NZD setup, still looking at more downside anyway. This to me looks like another correction, so I would expect naturally the price to have a push down. So maybe early next week we could be talking about some longs there for pound NZD. So keep a close eye on 2.15, looking for some buys, and hopefully if things go well we can swing it back to the high. Either way, if price does roll over, we can still manage that trade and still walk away for profit. So that'll be the plan next week for pound NZD. Okay, so over to CAD Yen. So expecting a lot more downside for CAD Yen, very bearish on this one. Again, if I expand to the higher time frames, I'm still looking at this bullish structure here as a correction of that bearish leg. So naturally, I do expect to see some follow through to the downside pretty soon. And I have been looking for a bit more upside for CAD Yen for a push back to the high over there for some shorts. For like a big double top, shorts around there, then looking for the swing. But it looks like we're seeing that move a little bit earlier than expected. We've been in this bullish structure for a while, seeing these higher lows, but the market is now broken through that structure, broken through the trend line as well, and broken outside of this range here as well. So I am now looking at price coming back for a retest of this same area for some shorts back to this low here at 105.882, and probably a lot more downside if we are going to see that continuation I've been talking about. Then we could see price really have a meltdown. So very bearish on CAD Yen. looking for a push back down to the prior low here. And now that we've seen the break of structures, seen the break of the consolidation, for me that is the green light that says, okay, shorts are looking very probable now, unless of course we come back inside the range. Then of course that would make the opportunity void. But if we can stay below, respect support, now turn resistance, of course, I do think that's a great area to be looking for shorts entries, and then see if we can take it back into the low, or even back to some of these prior lows here on the left as well. That could be great targets to have. It's up to you how you want to manage that. But in terms of direction for CAD very bearish, expecting more downside. As long as we stay below 108.7, which is the low of the range there, that resistance level, I will remain bearish and expect eventually a push back to the prior low at 105.882. So that is my take, that's my outlook on CAD for next week. Okay, so over to pound USD. So still very bearish on this one. If I expand to the higher time frames, we've been bearish for a while, ever since we kind of broke out that ascending trend line. We've seen a lot of momentum to the downside. So you can see the past prior lows here, 1, 2, 3, was looking for potentially a fourth there, but we broke through and haven't really looked back since. And we've just been ticking off these lows on the left here. We've taken out that low. Looks like we're probably going to come and take that low probably next week. And then of course we've got this low here as well, which could be a bit more of a longer term target, back down at 1.182. So very, very bearish on pound USD. There's a couple levels that I do like the look of. The test of 1.23, which is this prior low, lovely break not long ago, and we haven't seen the retest of that area yet, so that area looks great. And also the retest of that low up there around 1.25, also haven't really seen a clean break and retest of that level there either, so I would like to see a pullback over there. And again, if we do get that move, it'll be a really nice place to short from, because it's an area where, again, risk reward back to the low would be great, but you could potentially look to hold it even further than that as well. So that's the main reason why I do like the deep pullbacks, because if it does play out well, it can play out really well. If the trend does really continue, even with push back to the low, you're still looking at healthy risk reward there, 1 to 5s, maybe 1 to 6s, maybe even more. So yeah, very bearish on pound USD, looking for us to push to that next daily swing low, which is back at 1.206, sorry. That's still very much the plan for next week. We may just kind of spill over to the downside from here. Looks like we're breaking out this corrective channel there. We might be breaking to the downside early next week. That could be the case. So maybe intraday you can look at something like that, but for myself, still want to see those bigger pullbacks. 1.235 and 1.25 are my areas of interest. So yeah, very bearish on pound, expecting a lot more downside next week. Okay, so over to pound CAD. So pound CAD, I am looking for more downside for this one. We've had, in fairness, a really nice uptrend for a while, but it does look like we've hit a top and the market's struggling to create new highs. You can see resistance up here, test it once, twice, a third time and a fourth time. Each time failure to break through, although this one we slightly did break through, but we came straight back down. Market didn't have none of it, and we reversed since then. We've actually gone and spiked through these lows. We've just seen about a very small candle closure last week below that low, so technically a break of structure, but just not the most convincing one. But including the fact that we are seeing a lot of momentum to the downside, twice now, really aggressive move over here, really aggressive move over there, the fact that we are failing to break the highs as well, and the fact we've just about pinched the lows tells me there's a good chance that we are forming a top here for pound CAD, and we are going to see a move to the downside at some point. So I'm more interested in the shorts right now with pound CAD. I do like this level of support here on the left, really nice level, which of course will be turn resistance once we get there again. Of course, whether the price holds or not, we'll see as time continues, but if we can see some healthy rejections there, I do think that's a really nice place to short, at least back to where we came from, which of course is this level of support here. I have marked out an area on the daily chart, which I do think pound CAD will eventually get to, which is this level of resistance, really strong level. Tested it a few times here on the daily chart, and I do think if we are going to see a reversal of this bullish trend, probably at least going to get back to test that level there at 1.73. So I do still see more downside past this support level, but of course in terms of healthy targets, this makes a load of sense to be shorting towards. So that's really the plan there for pound CAD. Very bearish on pound USD as well, which tends to move similar to pound CAD, so it's nice to see them kind of correlated and doing the same thing at the moment. Of course, pound has been very weak, but yeah, if we can see a healthy correction, which at the moment in time looks like we're getting, retest 1.775, get some shorts from there, at least push back to the low there at 1.75, And then maybe if you're looking to trail stops or leave some positions to run, you can look at 1.73 as well. But that is the plan next week for pound CAD. Okay, so over to pound yen. So pound yen very bearish on for this one, expecting a lot more downside. Again, if we expand to the higher time frames, I'm still looking at this bullish structure as just a correction for price to eventually see a lot more downside. So that's really the plan, really the thought process here with pound yen longer term. So the next big level, I'm looking at this low, but we do have a level here to contend with, which is why I'm starting to back off from shorting pound yen at the moment. I still do have some areas I'm looking at. I'm still looking at this low here, this support level from last week. This is the area I said if price can get to, I'll be more than happy for some shorts. Unfortunately, this week we didn't quite make that happen. Price was still pretty bearish and we just kept falling. But of course, if you were to have a bigger pullback, I'm still all over that, looking to short it. And also this area here as well, brief consolidation before some continuation to the downside. This is technically our last lower high in the market, as it did take up the lows there as well. So we could be seeing the market pull back, retest this area here too, wrong tool, retest this area here as well, and then see the continuation to the downside. So I would say if you're intraday, I'd watch out for this consolidation around 192, looking for a slightly bigger pullback, some entries in the 4 hour. This zone here still looks really good as well. But altogether, you want to kind of stay away from this low if you're looking to short, of course, because this is where some higher time frame buyers will be looking to enter the market. And we could still see a pretty big reaction from that area. So naturally speaking, you want to be as far away from that level as possible, or at least not directly shorting into it. At least here on the intraday time frames, you can be well into profit before price does come back into that support level. But in terms of the analysis, in terms of the bias, very bearish on pound yen. Expecting a lot more downside. We put equal highs up there. Since then, we've seen some lovely lower highs develop and a really strong move to the downside. So naturally, just looking at a correction of that for more downside. Again, at least back into the low here for next week, 189, but longer term, looking for that push into 183. So that is the plan there for pound yen for next week. Okay, so over to gold. So gold, we are testing the high of the range. If we go to the daily chart, you can see price has been very, very flat over the past few weeks. Equal highs up there, equal lows down here, minus the fake out there, of course. But the market has been flat. We haven't really gone anywhere. We have seen a pretty nice uptrend. We did see higher highs and higher lows. Had a nice break and retest of this high this week, which played out pretty well. But overall, the market is very, very flat. However, if we scan to the higher time frames, particularly the weekly chart, this is still looking as bullish as ever. So very, very bullish market, still seeing a lot of momentum. I do expect us to eventually break to the upside and go and take out those all-time highs and see some new ones. So I'm very bullish on gold still looking to actively buy it. However, I do need to see price break the resistance there at 27.20, because that will be my green light that says, okay, buyers are taking control. That level's essentially broken. And if you can see a retest, that would be great. Find some entries, trade it back to the high, so on and so forth. So very, very bullish on gold, but we must, of course, break out of that range first, break the high, then we can look at opportunities in that favor. If price does respect the high this week, and let's say we go for a bit of a sell-off, no longer really interested in the price action in the middle. Maybe as we come back to the lows, there could be a nice bounce there, but generally speaking, inside the middle of this is just noise to me really for gold. So waiting for price to break the high, that would be a really nice signal. It says, okay, momentum is back with the buys. At least in the 4 hour time frame anyway, and I'll be expecting more upside, and of course targets back at the all-time high at 27.90. So that's really the setup I have for next week for gold. Okay, so over to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin very bullish this week, really nice rejection of 92, 93k. This is the level of support I said. As long as price can hold, I do expect price to continue moving to the upside. If we do break through, of course, I'll be at least bearish short term, still bullish long term, but I would at least be looking for a retrace to 73k. We didn't get that. Price held support pretty well. Really aggressive wick rejection on Monday, probably flushed out some early buys there, and now we've seen some nice follow through. So I do expect us to get back to the high, drop to the 4 hour chart, marked on some areas where we could be looking for some intraday buys, retest the high there, or potentially the retest of that resistance there as well, but naturally expecting us to get back to the high. The only thing I don't like about Bitcoin is that we are still a bit flat, so I do need to see price really pick up momentum. I know it looks like we're doing that, which is great. Keep that up, because if you do go and break the highs and just do it correctively, we're probably going to push up and then come straight back down again. Probably not going to see a big breakout like we did over here. It might just be take out the highs, trend to the upside for a little bit, and then we go for another steep correction. So yeah, that might be on the cards, but we'll judge that as we see price action develop. But for now, still expecting pushback to highs. I think intraday opportunities look good there, around 102.6k and 100.6k look really good. So keep an eye on those opportunities if you are interested intraday. But yeah, expecting a pushback to the all-time highs next week. Okay, so over to our bonus pair, which for this week is Euro Yen. Expecting a lot more downside for this pair. We've seen some really nice bearish structure come into play, lower highs as we can see and lower lows, and I do expect us to eventually break to the downside longer term. I'm looking at this as a really big head and shoulder pattern. We've got the left head and the right shoulder there. I do expect us to eventually break through the neckline and see a lot more downside on the higher time frames. If I quickly go to the monthly chart, you can see where we're trading. Last time the monthly chart pinched a major high, look what happened, a really big sell. Now if you look at where we're trading at the moment, we've just gone and done that again. So I do think we can at least see a bit of a correction, maybe to come back and retest the high there. So longer term, I do expect to see Euro Yen on a decline, and as we can see, we're getting price action that represents that on the lower time frames as well. On the daily chart, if I can delete this, there we go. We're seeing signs of that happening on the lower time frames as well. So expecting a lot more downside, but first things first, need to find some entries to actually take advantage of this move, and all I'm looking for is a pullback. We've seen some nice lower highs. The plan is to try and catch the next one. And if we can see a pullback into this area, brief pause in the market, as you can see with that doji there. If I whip out the fib from our last swing high to the low, lines up pretty well for 0.618. So that's really where I want to find my entries, and hopefully find a stop loss relatively tight above that, where I can maximize my risk reward back into the low here. And I do think we can go further, so I will be trading stops, but I probably will look in some gains at that low just in case we do turn around. But I do expect us to eventually take out this wick low with Euro Yen. I don't know when, but I do expect us to eventually take that out. So yeah, very bearish in Euro Yen as long as we can maintain structure and do not break through this high here. If we do break through that high, it might mean a more prolonged correction. Still would be bearish longer term, but we might see some bullish structure develop, which could give some nice short-term buys to look at. But for now, as long as we can respect that high at 162.8, I do expect to see a big drop next week. So yeah, that's the plan with Euro Yen, and it does take us to the end of the analysis. If you have found this useful, guys, please be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and of course hit the bell. Comment down below any markets you're looking to trade next week. I'm interested to find out. Check out the Elevating Traders Discord channel, completely free to join. Link to that in the description below. Chat with other traders, including myself, and of course you can find out a bit more about Elevating Traders as well. But guys, really appreciate you tuning in. Have a great weekend, and I'll catch you all next week.